If you had told me 3 years ago that I'd be standing in my driveway, heart racing, trying to explain myself to a police officer while my sister screamed from the porch like she was auditioning for a soap opera, I would have laughed in your face. Back then, I was the easygoing guy in the family, the cool uncle, the one who'd bring donuts just because, play tag until his knees gave out, and give rides without ever expecting gas money. My name's Travis. I'm 31. No wife, no kids of my own. Unless you count my cat, Doug, who acts more like a grumpy roommate than a pet. I work remote tech support from home and live in the same house I grew up in, though it's been remodeled and repainted enough times that it barely feels like the place where my sister used to throw my action figures off the roof to see if they could fly. That sister? Her name's Monica. She's 36, a single mom of 2, and somehow still manages to carry herself like she's doing the world a favor just by existing. We used to be close, at least as close as siblings 5 years apart can be when one is a know-it-all drama queen and the other is just trying to mind his business. After her divorce 2 years ago, though, things shifted. Fast. Monica leaned on me hard. At first, I didn't mind. I mean, it made sense. She was going through a rough patch, and I figured watching my niece and nephew, Lily and Mason, every now and then was the least I could do. But every now and then turned into twice a week, then every other day, then random knock-knocks at 6 a.m. with Monica shoving her kids at me like a pair of luggage she didn't feel like carrying. She always had some excuse. A job interview. A date. Just one quick errand. Once, she dropped them off and vanished for an entire weekend without so much as a text. I found out later she'd gone to a wine retreat with her friends in Napa. Meanwhile, I was trying to explain to a 5-year-old why Paw Patrol wasn't on Netflix anymore and calming down a 3-year-old who thought the sky was falling because it started raining. I should have set boundaries earlier. I know that now. But back then, I didn't want to rock the boat. My parents, bless them, but they're blind when it comes to Monica, always praised her for being strong and pushing through for the kids. Never mind the fact that half her strength came from offloading her responsibilities onto me. Whenever I brought up feeling taken advantage of, my mom would sigh and say something like, "Travis, you're so good with them. It's just a phase. Monica needs support right now." My dad, he'd shake his head and mutter, "Just help your sister. That's what family does." It wasn't just my parents, either. Friends started noticing. My buddy Eric joked once, "Dude, you're a babysitter with a mortgage." I laughed, but it stung. I didn't mind helping. I loved Lily and Mason. But there's a difference between helping and being dumped on. And Monica? She never asked. She'd just assume I'd say yes. It became this unspoken arrangement where saying no felt like kicking puppies. She'd show up with that tight smile, dump the diaper bag by the door, and vanish before I could finish my coffee. There was this one time. I remember it clearly because it was the same day I had a virtual interview for a promotion. I had told Monica in advance I couldn't watch the kids that day. I even texted her 3 reminders. But at 9 a.m., there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Lily holding her Elsa backpack and Mason dragging his blankie across my welcome mat like a dish rag. No Monica in sight. I stood there, dumbfounded, until I saw her speeding off in her car like she'd just committed a crime. I was livid. But what could I do? Leave the kids outside? Of course not. So I missed the prep time for my interview and botched the whole thing, trying to mute a crying toddler while explaining database management to a hiring manager. I didn't get the job. Still, I swallowed it. Every time I swallowed it, I kept telling myself she'd eventually get it together, find some stable ground, and stop using me as her fallback. But people don't change when you enable them. They just get bolder. The breaking point started 2 Fridays ago. It was supposed to be my weekend off. No Zoom calls, no client emergencies. Just me, Doug, and a pizza the size of my ego. I was halfway through a documentary about old-school game developers when my phone buzzed. "Monica." I let it ring. Then came the texts. "Hey, can you take the kids? I've got a date. Just a few hours." I didn't reply. 5 minutes later. "Travis? I need you." And then, "Don't ignore me. This is important." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I could already hear her voice in my head. High-pitched, passive-aggressive, with just enough guilt tripping to make me feel like the villain. But something in me snapped. I was tired. Tired of being treated like a backup plan. Tired of pretending I didn't mind. So for the first time in over a year, I said no. "Can't do it." I have plans. Please ask someone else. She didn't respond. For about 30 minutes, I thought maybe she finally got it. Maybe this was the beginning of her respecting my time. I even started to relax, finished my pizza, and was just reaching for the remote when I heard knocking. Not the light tap-tap of a friendly visit. No, this was pounding. Urgent. Annoyed. I opened the door, and there she was, Monica, fuming, arms crossed, kids in the car behind her. She didn't even say hello. You're seriously not taking them? No. I told you I had plans. You always have plans lately, she snapped, brushing past me into the house like she owned the place. What? Some big bachelor party with your cat? I closed the door behind her, trying to keep calm. You didn't even ask if I was free. You just assumed. I'm their mother, Travis. I need support. I took a breath. And I've been supporting you. For months. But I'm not your husband. I'm not your nanny. You need to figure this out. She rolled her eyes. Wow. So dramatic. It's a few hours. They love being here. That's not the point. She looked like she was about to argue more. But then Lily started crying in the car. Mason kicked the back of the seat. Monica gave me this look like I was the one torturing them. You're really going to make them go back home upset? She hissed. I didn't answer. And that silence? That silence was apparently unforgivable. She left in a cloud of muttered insults and slammed car doors, peeling out of my driveway like a teenager grounded for the weekend. I figured that was it. Maybe she'd cool off. Maybe she'd realize she couldn't bully me into parenting her kids for her. But I underestimated just how far Monica was willing to go. Because less than an hour later, I heard another knock. This time, it wasn't Monica. It was a police officer. And behind him, my parents. I froze when I opened the door. Not because I thought I'd done anything wrong, but because there's something deeply unsettling about seeing a cop on your doorstep, especially when you have no clue why they're there. He wasn't one of those cartoonishly stern types, but the uniform, the belt, the badge, they all carried weight. Enough weight to make my stomach twist. He stood tall, maybe early 40s, dark sunglasses even though the sun had dipped low, and a professional, unreadable expression on his face. Travis Hallbrook? He asked, clipboard in hand. Yeah. He nodded. I'm Officer Langley. I received a call regarding potential child neglect happening at this residence. Can I come in for a quick chat? My mouth went dry. I blinked at him, half expecting a camera crew to jump out and yell gotcha. But no, this wasn't a prank. This was real. I stepped aside, heart pounding in my ears. Then I saw them, my parents. My mom standing by the driveway, arms folded tight across her chest like she was cold, even though it was 73 degrees. My dad beside her, face grim, eyes narrowed. Neither of them waved. Neither of them smiled. My chest sank. Officer Langley stepped inside and looked around like he was searching for something or someone. Mind if I take a look around? He asked. Sure, I said, confused. But there are no kids here. I'm alone. He looked back at me. We received a report that 2 minor children were left unsupervised in this house, and that their safety was in question. What? I blinked. No, that didn't happen. He paused, clearly trying to read me. Let's sit down for a moment. We moved into the living room. Doug, my grumpy cat, was sprawled on the couch like none of this concerned him. I envied that cat more than I can explain. Officer Langley pulled out a notepad. Can you walk me through your day? Just a brief timeline. So I did. I explained everything, from Monica's text to her showing up and me refusing to take the kids. I told him exactly what I said, how she left with them, how I thought it was over. I even showed him the texts, which thankfully I hadn't deleted. He nodded slowly, jotting things down. And you're saying you never had custody of the children today? Not even briefly. I didn't even step outside the house, I said. Look, I've watched them before. Many times. But not today. Not after I said no. Monica left upset. That's the last I heard from her. He looked at me, then back at his notes. And you live alone? Yeah, just me and my cat. He gave a small exhale and nodded. Okay, I believe you. The relief I felt was instant, but short-lived. Because then came the next part. He stood and walked toward the front door, motioning me to follow. Outside, my parents were still standing there, but now Monica had returned. She was talking animatedly to my mom, her face red and puffy like she'd worked herself into tears. When she saw the officer with me, her eyes narrowed like I was a cockroach that had crawled out from under the fridge. Officer Langley called them over. Can I speak to you for a moment, ma'am? He said to Monica. She walked up, arms crossed, voice quivering with fake urgency. Did you find them? Are the kids okay? He raised a brow. There were no children in the house, ma'am. Mr. Holbrook says he declined to take them today. Do you have reason to believe otherwise? Monica blinked, caught off guard, but only for a second. Then the tears turned on like a faucet. He's lying. I dropped them off. I knocked and left them at the door. He told me he'd take them. That was a flat-out lie. And bold. And dangerous. My mom gasped. You left them outside? No, I cut in. She's lying. She never dropped them off. She got mad and drove off. Check my porch cam. Monica looked like she'd just swallowed a lemon. That's a good idea, Officer Langley said, turning to me. Do you have footage? I nodded and pulled out my phone, heart racing as I opened the app for my security system. I scrolled back to the exact time, 9:03 p.m. There she was, in HD quality, standing at the door alone. No kids. No car seats being removed. No backpacks. Just Monica, yelling at me, storming off. I handed the phone to Officer Langley. He watched it, stone-faced. Then he turned back to her. Ma'am, he said, voice stern now. This contradicts your statement. There's no evidence you left children here, and if you falsely report neglect, that's a serious matter. Monica's face crumpled in real panic now. I must have mixed up the times. I meant earlier. Maybe I was confused. But the damage was done. She stammered. My parents stared at her in shock, and Officer Langley gave her the kind of look usually reserved for people who try to bring soup through airport security. I'm going to file this as a false report, he said. Mr. Holbrook, I apologize for the inconvenience. We're done here. He handed me a card and left. The silence after the squad car pulled away was suffocating. My mom finally spoke. Monica, what were you thinking? Monica didn't answer. She just gave me a death glare, turned on her heel, and got into her car. My dad shook his head. This is getting out of hand. You think? They left shortly after, in an awkward shuffle of goodbyes and forced expressions. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, lights off, Doug curled at my feet, and stared at the ceiling trying to piece it all together. She tried to get me in trouble with the police. With Child Protective Services, no less. Because I said no. And my parents? They'd shown up without even hearing my side. They'd just believed her. That part cut deeper than I expected. Not because I needed them to blindly take my side, but because they hadn't even asked. They'd stood beside her in that driveway like a jury I hadn't agreed to face. The next day, I woke up to 26 text messages from Monica. Most of them were long, accusatory paragraphs. Some were guilt trips. Do you even care about your niece and nephew? Others were outright manipulative. I'm all they have. If you're not going to help, what do you expect me to do? And a few were just plain venomous. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I needed to think. But things didn't calm down. In fact, the fallout got worse. 2 days later, I got a call from my mom. She wanted to talk about what happened. Travis, she said, voice calm but strained. I know Monica overreacted, but she's under a lot of stress. You think that justifies calling the police on me? No, of course not. That was wrong. But she's overwhelmed. And the kids are not my kids. There was a long pause. Then she sighed. You've always been the responsible one. You know that. That's why we've trusted you to help. Oh, there it was. The old line. The unspoken family rule. Travis will take it. Travis will carry it. Travis will deal with it because he's stronger. But I wasn't feeling strong. I was feeling used. I'm not a safety net, I said quietly. And I'm not going to be one anymore. Mom didn't know what to say to that. She just said we'd talk soon and hung up. After that, Monica switched tactics. She went from angry texts to painting herself as the victim on social media. I don't use Facebook much, but I got a message from an old family friend saying, "Is everything okay with your sister?" She posted something weird. I logged in and found a long, passive-aggressive post on her page. When you can't even count on your own family to support you through hard times, you start to realize who truly cares about your kids. Sad how some people would rather watch Netflix than make sure 2 innocent children are safe. But hey, cats are more important, right? There were over 50 likes and a handful of concerned comments. A few people offered her support. Some asked who she was talking about. One of my aunts tagged me. I didn't comment. I didn't engage. But inside, something was shifting. A line had been crossed. And for the first time, I wasn't just frustrated, I was done. I started pulling back. I muted her on every app. I told my parents I wouldn't be attending Sunday dinner if Monica was there. I even started looking into ways to formally distance myself from any guardianship or emergency contacts tied to her kids. I wasn't trying to punish them, but I had to protect myself. But Monica didn't like losing control, so she escalated. 3 days later, I came home from grabbing groceries and noticed my mailbox was slightly open. Inside was a letter, handwritten. No stamp, just folded neatly. It read, "You've made your choice. Just remember, choices have consequences. I won't protect you next time." No signature, but I knew the handwriting. Monica had a very specific way of making her "why" loop under the line. I stared at the letter for a long time, then looked toward the street. Nothing. No sign of her. Just the quiet hum of a neighborhood pretending it wasn't suffocating under all the polite silence. I didn't call the police. Not yet. But I took pictures. Saved them. Backed them up. Because something told me this wasn't over. And I was right. It's weird how betrayal doesn't always feel like a sharp stab in the back. Sometimes it's slower. Like a rope tightening around your chest. You can still breathe at first. Still think straight. But little by little, it starts to pull tighter until all you're left with is that sinking, panicked feeling that something permanent has just broken. That's what part 3 of this mess felt like. It started with silence. After the creepy letter in my mailbox, Monica's little choices have consequences. Jim, I expected more fireworks. A tantrum. A screaming phone call. Maybe even another fake police report. But instead, I got nothing. For almost 2 weeks. It was unnerving. You'd think I'd be relieved, but I wasn't. It felt like waiting for a storm to hit after the wind dies down. I kept checking my porch cam obsessively. I even started locking the side gate to my backyard and double-checking all the windows every night before bed. I don't think Monica would do anything violent, but I also wouldn't have expected her to try and get me arrested. And yet, here we were. During that quiet stretch, I tried to get my life back to some version of normal. I went for runs. Took on a few extra freelance projects. Started eating real meals again instead of stress snacking my way through boxes of granola bars. Doug, my ever-judgy cat, finally stopped side-eyeing me like I was vibrating with nervous energy. But that peace was built on a landmine. And it didn't last. It all came to a head one Thursday evening. I remember it so clearly because I was on a client call when I noticed a missed call from my boss. I work contract tech support for a mid-sized startup, and while the job isn't glamorous, it's stable. And I'd been working toward a more permanent, salaried position for months. The plan was for them to review my case in December. If I kept performing well, I'd be bumped to full-time with benefits. That call, it wrecked everything. I called him back the second I got off the Zoom session. "Hey, Brad, sorry I missed you. Everything okay?" His voice was clipped. Tense. "Travis, we need to talk. Something came up in HR today." My stomach dropped. "HR? What?" He hesitated. "We got a call from someone claiming you've been running an unlicensed daycare out of your home. That there were multiple incidents of child endangerment, neglect, and even verbal abuse." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "What?" I could barely breathe. "That's not true. I don't even run a daycare." "That's absurd." "I figured," Brad said quickly. I told them it sounded completely off. But they didn't call us directly. They filed a complaint through a watchdog site that reviews our contractors for compliance. It triggered an automatic flag in our system. Who reported it? They didn't leave a name, but the complaint was detailed. Descriptions of your house. Specific times of day. Even mentioned your cat by name. Doug. Doug was in the report? That's when I knew. Without a doubt. It was Monica. "She's lying," I said, more to myself than him. "My sister, she's trying to sabotage me. I said no to babysitting, and she's unraveling." Brad was silent for a moment. "Travis, I believe you. But HR is spooked. They want a formal investigation before we move forward with your full-time application. So what happens now? We're freezing your promotion timeline until we resolve it. You can keep working contract jobs in the meantime, but you're going to have to submit a written response and possibly agree to a home visit." A home visit? I know it's overkill, but we have protocols. After we hung up, I just sat there, phone in my lap, hands shaking. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just shut down. You know that feeling when you realize someone you thought you knew is actually capable of something way darker? That moment when all the memories, the birthday parties, the sleepovers, the inside jokes, start to feel like they belong to someone else? That was me, sitting in my office, staring at the wall like it might give me an answer. How could Monica do this? Calling the cops was one thing. Spinning Facebook narratives was another. But going after my job, risking my income, my future, that was a whole new level of malicious. The next day, I did what I should have done weeks ago. I booked a meeting with a lawyer. Her name was Rachel, and she looked like the kind of woman who'd win an argument without raising her voice. Calm, focused, sharp as a blade under soft lighting. I laid out everything, every text, every incident, the police report, the HR complaint. I even played her the porch cam video and showed her the letter Monica left in my mailbox. When I finished, Rachel leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. "This is harassment," she said plainly. "She's built a pattern. False police reports, defamation, malicious interference with employment. Can I sue her? You can. The question is whether you should. She's family. It's messy. And if you go nuclear, it'll burn every bridge in sight." I didn't hesitate. She already set the fire. I'm just deciding if I want to stop letting it burn me. Rachel nodded. "Then here's what we'll do. First, we'll send her a cease and desist letter. Make it official. Second, we'll notify your employer that legal action is being considered in response to the false report. That might help speed up their internal investigation. Third," she paused, "do you want to pursue a restraining order?" I hadn't thought about it. But suddenly, the idea didn't seem extreme. It seemed necessary. "Yes," I said. "I do." I left the office with paperwork in hand and a twisted knot of nerves in my chest. This was war now. Legal, adult war, but war all the same. Of course, Monica didn't take the cease and desist well. She showed up at my parents' house the next day, sobbing hysterically, waving the letter like it was an eviction notice from God. My mom called me, voice tight with panic. "Travis, what is this? Why did Monica get served with legal papers?" "She tried to ruin my career," I said flatly. "She says you're exaggerating, that it was all a misunderstanding." "Oh, really? Which part? The false CPS complaint? The police lie? The threatening letter in my mailbox?" There was silence on the other end. "You're taking this too far," Mom finally whispered. "You're suing your sister." "I haven't filed anything yet, but I'm protecting myself. She's the mother of your niece and nephew. She's a grown adult who made a choice." Then, in the softest, most devastating voice, my mother said, "I just wish you could let this go." That broke me. I wasn't surprised. Not really. But hearing it out loud, it felt like a betrayal stacked on top of Monica's. Like they were all quietly agreeing that my boundaries, my peace, came second to Monica's comfort. "Again, Mom," I said, voice cracking. "You didn't even ask if I was okay. I know this is hard on you." "No," I cut in. "You don't. You never do. You didn't check on me when the cops showed up. You didn't check on me when Monica lied about your grandkids being in danger. You didn't even check on me after she tried to ruin my career. All you've done is tell me to keep forgiving." More silence. "I love you, Mom," I added, "but I'm not doing this anymore." I hung up before she could respond. After that, the dynamic shifted completely. Monica started posting more cryptic stuff online. Bible verses about forgiveness, vague references to family betrayal, and even a GoFundMe titled "Single Mom Just Trying to Get Back on Her Feet." She claimed she'd been financially devastated by false legal threats, and several relatives shared it. A few even messaged me to ask what was going on. I ignored them all. And then came the final straw. One night, I was coming back from the grocery store when I noticed something strange. My front door was ajar. Not wide open, but not fully closed either. I stopped cold. Doug was an indoor cat. He never left the house. My heart raced as I rushed inside. Groceries dropped at the door. Doug was fine, thank God. But the living room? Someone had been in there. It wasn't trashed. Nothing was missing. But things were wrong. A chair was moved. A drawer slightly open. A coffee mug on the counter I hadn't used in days. And on the kitchen table, in the same handwriting as the mailbox letter, was another note. "Family doesn't take family to court." That was it. No name. No threats. Just a warning. But I didn't feel fear this time. I felt fury. Pure, ice-cold fury. This wasn't miscommunication. This wasn't a messy sibling fight. This was psychological warfare. Gaslighting. Manipulation. And now? Trespassing. She'd broken into my home. The camera footage showed her coming in through the side door, the one I used for the backyard. I hadn't locked it that day. I hadn't thought I needed to. I called Rachel. I called the police. I documented everything. And then I started planning something I never thought I'd do. A full legal case. I wasn't just going to defend myself anymore. I was going to expose everything. There's a strange quiet that settles in after your world tilts sideways. It's not peace. It's not even numbness. It's the kind of quiet that follows destruction, like standing in the ashes after everything you built has already burned. That's where I was. After the break-in, the police came. They dusted for prints, looked around, and asked questions, all while I sat at my kitchen table staring at that second note. I told them who I thought it was. They didn't say much, just that they'd look into it. But the look on the officer's face told me everything. He knew how complicated family cases got. He knew how easily they got buried. Rachel, my lawyer, filed an emergency restraining order that same day. She was efficient, methodical, and calm, everything I wasn't. We'll get this approved within 48 hours, she said. Until then, do not contact her directly. Let me handle everything. So I did. I handed over all communication, texts, letters, camera footage, everything. I even took a few days off work, though off is a generous word. I couldn't focus. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the footage of Monica sneaking through my side gate, opening my door, and walking around like she owned the place. She didn't steal anything. She just wanted me to know she could, that she wasn't afraid. And somehow, that terrified me more than if she had. When my parents found out about the restraining order, all hell broke loose. My mom called, sobbing. Travis, this is tearing the family apart. You're making things worse. Can't you just sit down with your sister and talk? I laughed, a short, broken sound. Mom, she broke into my house. What exactly do you want me to talk about? Whether she used the right door? Don't be sarcastic, she said sharply, the tears replaced by that tone she used when I was a teenager. She's unstable right now. She needs compassion. She needs consequences. That ended the call. My dad texted later, saying he was disappointed in how I was handling things. Not in her, but in me. Because apparently, standing up for myself was now a moral failure. That weekend, I stopped answering their calls altogether. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was also clarifying. I started realizing just how much of my life had revolved around keeping the peace, doing whatever it took to keep Monica calm, to keep Mom proud, to keep everyone else comfortable. Every argument I'd backed down from, every favor I'd agreed to, every time I swallowed anger instead of speaking up, it all came rushing back like a highlight reel of my own weakness. And now? Now I was done being the peacekeeper. But the damage was already spreading. At work, HR had escalated the false daycare report. They weren't accusing me of anything directly, but they needed cooperation. So I found myself cleaning my house for a home inspection, something they said was optional, but encouraged. Optional, my foot. I felt like a criminal prepping for parole review. When the HR rep showed up, she was polite but distant. She looked around, took notes, smiled in that corporate way that doesn't reach the eyes. I showed her my documentation, the police report, the lawyer's letter, even the restraining order request. She nodded sympathetically but didn't say much. 2 days later, Brad called. Travis, I have to be honest. HR's nervous. The complaint might have been fake, but the optics are bad. We have to pause your projects for now. So I'm suspended? Temporarily. How long is temporarily? He sighed. Until they finish their review. I didn't argue. What would be the point? I just hung up, stared at my blank computer screen, and let the weight of it sink in. My income, gone, at least for now. My reputation, under review. My family, fractured beyond recognition. And Monica? Silent. No calls. No texts. No public posts. It was as if she'd vanished, but I knew better. She was sitting somewhere, waiting for me to crumble under the pressure she'd created. And for a while, I almost did. I stopped leaving the house unless I had to. The groceries I bought rotted in the fridge. My sleep schedule disintegrated. Even Doug seemed to pick up on it. He'd curl against my side like he was guarding me from something invisible. I didn't even have the energy to put up my usual sarcastic front anymore. But somewhere in the middle of that low point, a shift started. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, almost unnoticeable. One night, around 3 a.m., I sat in the dark with a mug of cold coffee and thought about everything I'd lost. Then I started thinking about what I still had. The security footage, the texts, the police records, even the letter. I'd been so focused on surviving the chaos that I hadn't realized how much evidence she'd left behind. I opened my laptop, created a folder called Documentation. and started organizing. I went through every message, screenshotting, labeling, timestamping. Every lie, every threat, every post. I backed it up twice, one on a drive, one on the cloud. It was mechanical at first, but it felt like reclaiming control, like piecing together the narrative she had tried to twist against me. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to play defense forever. Days turned into weeks. The restraining order was approved, temporary, but still a win. Rachel said the court date for the full order was scheduled in a month. She also said Monica hadn't responded to the cease and desist, which worked in our favor. Then something unexpected happened. I got an email from Brad. "Hey Travis, HR concluded their review. Everything's cleared. We're reinstating your projects starting next week. Sorry for the mess. I know this was rough. Also, I spoke to the higher UPS about your performance. They're still considering you for full-time once the dust settles." I stared at that email for a long time. Relief washed through me, but it was bittersweet. I should have felt victorious, but instead I just felt tired. Because while I'd survived her sabotage, the trust was gone, not just with her, but with everyone who had stayed silent when it mattered. I didn't tell my parents about the reinstatement. Didn't answer when my mom texted a week later asking if we could have dinner as a family. I was done trying to fix a dynamic that clearly didn't want to be fixed. Instead, I focused on the plan. Rachel and I went through everything again. She said if we pursued the case, we'd have to prove not just defamation, but malicious intent, that Monica knowingly lied to harm my reputation and income. Between the police report, the HR complaint, and the break-in footage, we had a solid foundation. Most people wouldn't go through this much trouble to hurt a sibling, Rachel said one day, scanning through the files. What do you think she really wants? I thought about that. About every time Monica had guilt me, manipulated me, or cried her way out of consequences. About how she thrived when people bent around her chaos. She wants control, I said finally. And she's losing it. Rachel nodded. Then that's what makes her dangerous. The next week, I quietly started preparing my personal life for distance. Changed the locks. Installed a new alarm system. Updated my passwords. Removed Monica and my parents from my emergency contacts. Even changed the beneficiary on my life insurance. It felt dramatic, but I'd learned that dramatic is what people call boundaries when they're used to you having none. But the hardest part came one Sunday evening. I drove to my parents' house. They hadn't heard from me in weeks, and I knew if I didn't face them now, they'd just show up uninvited someday. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light was on. I could see my mom through the kitchen window, setting the table like she always did. When she saw me, her face lit up, hopeful, like everything could just go back to normal. It couldn't. Dinner was quiet, tense. My dad asked polite questions about work. My mom avoided eye contact. It was like everyone was pretending we hadn't been through a family civil war. Finally, I set down my fork. "Mom, Dad, I'm moving forward with the case." The words hung in the air. Mom's face crumpled. "Travis, please." "No, I've made up my mind." She broke into my home. She lied to the police. She tried to ruin my job. I've given her chance after chance. I'm done being the person everyone expects to fix it. My dad's jaw tightened. "You'll regret this." I met his eyes. I already regret not doing it sooner. I stood up, thanked them for dinner, and left. That drive home was the loneliest one of my life. Not because I'd lost my family. I think, deep down, I'd lost them a long time ago. But because I realized I was finally choosing myself over them. And that kind of freedom doesn't come without grief. When I got home, the house was dark, quiet, safe. Doug jumped onto my lap as I sat on the couch, his weight warm and grounding. I opened my laptop, pulled up the folder labeled documentation, and began typing the first draft of my formal complaint. Every detail, every date, every lie, laid bare in black and white. For the first time in months, my hands didn't shake. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I was building something. And somewhere deep down, I knew Monica had no idea what was coming next. They say healing isn't linear, and whoever said that must have had a sister like mine. The weeks after I walked away from my parents' dinner table were quiet in a way that didn't feel like avoidance anymore. It felt intentional, like I was finally carving out a space in my life that belonged to me. Not to Monica's chaos, not to my parents' guilt, not to anyone else's expectations. Just me, my work, and my extremely judgmental cat. The first sign that things were changing came through my email inbox. Brad, my manager, sent me a note on Monday morning. No warning, no formal meeting, just one line. Check your dashboard. Welcome to full-time, bud. I blinked, then blinked again. My heart started racing as I opened our internal portal, and sure enough, there it was. My profile had been updated, full-time employee, health benefits, PTO, bonus eligibility. I didn't even realize I was smiling until Doug leapt off my lap like I'd startled him. I'd been waiting for that moment for over a year, and the fact that it happened not in spite of the drama Monica caused, but almost because of how I responded to it, was something I hadn't fully let myself hope for. I texted Rachel. Job reinstated. Full-time. Thanks for getting me through that mess. She replied within 5 minutes. Told you were stronger than you thought. I celebrated by doing something I hadn't done in months. I bought myself something. Not something practical like a new mouse or some overpriced software plugin. I bought a guitar. A Fender acoustic, warm sunburst finish. The kind I used to dream about owning when I was a broke college kid learning chords on a secondhand beater that wouldn't stay in tune. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had gotten buried under years of obligation. Every evening after work, I played. Not well, but loud. Loud enough to fill the space that had once felt too quiet. Doug hated it, of course. He'd retreat to the windowsill like I'd personally betrayed him. But I think even he knew something had shifted. Life wasn't just surviving anymore. It was starting to grow. Legally, things were moving too. Rachel filed a formal civil complaint against Monica. We weren't asking for millions, just enough to cover the damages. Lost income, emotional distress, legal fees. It wasn't about money, though. Not really. It was about forcing accountability into a space where it had never existed before. The temporary restraining order was still in place, and the court hearing for the permanent one was approaching fast. I expected Monica to retaliate, but she didn't. Not directly. Instead, she got smarter. She stopped posting vague complaints online, stopped crying to extended family. She even stopped showing up to our parents' house unannounced, which was so out of character that it almost worried me. But Rachel saw it differently. She's retreating, she said. That's what people do when they realize they're not in control anymore. They lay low and wait for you to get comfortable again. I'm not getting comfortable, I told her. And I meant it. Because the truth was, I'd started documenting everything. Every interaction with my family. Every voicemail. Every comment from a cousin who asked if I was really taking things too far. I wasn't just building a legal case anymore. I was building a shield. A life with boundaries, reinforced by proof and clarity. The days of being gaslit into submission were over. And something else started happening too, something I didn't expect. People began reaching out. Quietly, carefully. A cousin I hadn't seen in 2 years messaged me on Instagram. Hey, just saw what's going on. I believe you. Monica did something similar to me years ago when I said no to babysitting. You're not crazy. Then another message from an old neighbor. She told people I was stealing from her garage when I refused to lend her money. You're not alone. Each message felt like a match striking in the dark. For so long, I'd felt like I was the problem. Like maybe I was overreacting. But now I realized I wasn't the first person Monica had tried to bulldoze. I was just the first to fight back. My parents didn't say much during this time. A few texts from my mom. Short ones. Hope you're okay. Your sister misses you. We're all hurting. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready. They hadn't apologized. They hadn't even acknowledged the break-in. All they wanted was peace, and peace, to them, meant my silence. That wasn't going to happen. Then came the court hearing. I showed up in a button-down and blazer. Rachel looked fierce in her understated way. Clean lines, calm tone, deadly precision. Monica, on the other hand, looked tired. Not in a sympathetic way. More like someone who hadn't gotten her way in a while and didn't know how to function without attention. She avoided my eyes the entire time. The judge reviewed the footage, the police report, the texts, the notes. He listened to Rachel lay it all out, clean and brutal and inarguable. Monica's lawyer tried to paint it all as a series of misunderstandings between siblings, but it was weak, toothless. In the end, the judge granted the permanent restraining order. 6 months, with potential for extension. Monica was to have no contact with me, direct or indirect. When we stepped out of the courtroom, Rachel turned to me and smiled. That, she said, was a win. I wish I could say I felt triumphant. I didn't. Not right away. I just felt still, like the noise had finally stopped, like I could finally hear myself think again. In the weeks that followed, things got better. Not in some Hollywood montage, everything is perfect way, but in small, grounding ways. I woke up on time again, ate real meals, got through my inbox without anxiety spikes. Even Doug seemed more chill, though that might have been the fancy new cat tower I bought him. Work stabilized too. Brad started assigning me higher profile projects. I got a mention in the company newsletter. People started CCing me for input instead of just looping me in for damage control. I was finally being seen as more than just the reliable guy. I was being respected. And creatively, I started writing again. Not blogs, not tech manuals. Stories. Messy, personal, cathartic stories about family and forgiveness and boundaries and betrayal. I didn't publish them. Not yet. But they were mine. They were a way to pull all the threads of the last year into something that made sense. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't just surviving my family. I was building a life without their weight on my shoulders. Then, one afternoon, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. My pulse spiked. I opened it carefully, half expecting another veiled threat. But it wasn't from Monica. It was from Lily. Her handwriting was clumsy. Crayon in some places, pencil in others. Hi, Uncle Travis. Mommy said you are busy, but I miss you. I like your house and your cat. I hope you're not mad. I don't know what happened. I love you. From Lily, smiley face. I sat down at the kitchen table and cried. Ugly, shaking, gut-wrenching tears that I hadn't let myself feel since this all started. Because as much as I'd set boundaries, as much as I knew I was right, I hadn't stopped missing those kids. And Lily? She was innocent. A casualty of Monica's mess. A child caught between adults who were too busy proving points to protect her peace. It broke my heart. But it also reminded me why I was doing all of this. Not just for me, but for them. So they could grow up in a world where people like Monica didn't get to control everything. Where boundaries were modeled instead of punished. Where saying no didn't make you the villain. I wrote Lily back. Carefully. Lightly. Hi, Lily. I miss you too. I think about you and Mason all the time. I'm not mad at you. I'm proud of you. And Doug says hi, smiley face. I didn't mention Monica. Didn't touch the legal stuff. Just kept it warm. Safe. Kid appropriate. I mailed it the next morning and went back inside, standing in the doorway a little longer than usual. The air felt different. Lighter. Like maybe, for the first time in a long time, the rest of my life could finally begin. Revenge wasn't something I had planned. Not at first. I didn't sit in a dimly lit room twiddling my fingers, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. No corkboard with red string. No dramatic countdown. I wasn't that guy. I just wanted peace. I wanted to work, breathe, and live my life without Monica hovering like a storm cloud over everything I cared about. But revenge has a funny way of growing in silence. It grows in the space between the lies you swallowed and the nights you stayed awake wishing you'd said more, done more. And it turns out, if you clear your life of chaos long enough, the space left behind starts to whisper ideas. It started with a phone call. Not from Monica. Not from my parents. From a woman named Anna. Someone I barely remembered at first. Travis? You might not remember me. I'm Anna Mathis. We went to high school together. The name clicked after a second. She was a year above me. Debate team. Sharp as a tack. Always had a way of making people listen without raising her voice. Hey, yeah. I remember. Wow. It's been a while. She laughed lightly. Yeah, 15 years. Listen, this is a little out of the blue, but I heard from a mutual friend, your cousin Emma, I think, about the stuff going on with your sister. I wanted to reach out. I stiffened. What exactly did she tell you? Just that you were going through a legal mess with your sister, and that there was some drama. But that's not why I'm calling. I work for child welfare now. Specifically, the Family Stability Review Board. My heart skipped. I'm not involved in your case, she added quickly. Conflict of interest and all. But when I heard your name, I remembered something from back when I was working intake 3 years ago. I sat up straighter. There was a complaint filed against Monica Hallbrook. It never went anywhere, lack of follow-through. But it was serious. A neighbor reported hearing yelling, said the kids were being left alone for long periods. I swallowed. I never heard about that. Because she got lucky, Anna said. No one followed up. The neighbor moved. And Monica said it was a misunderstanding. But I pulled the file. It's still archived. I rubbed my temple. Is that something that can be used now? She paused. Off the record, if she ever files anything against you involving the kids, or tries to involve CPS again, that pattern matters. It shows a history. And you have leverage now, Travis. You're stable. You've documented everything. People will listen to you. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. It felt like I'd been digging with my bare hands in the dark for months, and someone had just handed me a flashlight. Thank you, I said finally. Seriously. She hesitated again. There's one more thing. She's trying to enroll the kids in a private preschool across town, one with a strict parent background check policy. I used to consult with them. Just letting you know. If she's lying on her application or using someone else's info, it might catch up to her. I hung up, heart racing, not with fear, but with clarity. It was time to stop reacting. It was time to act. Over the next few days, I started assembling something that Rachel would later call the most quietly devastating case file she'd ever seen. I didn't need to take Monica down publicly. I didn't need to shout from rooftops. What I needed was to make sure every institution she might manipulate, schools, courts, welfare, work, knew who she was. I submitted a formal affidavit to the Family Stability Review Board with Rachel's help, citing the break-in, false CPS report, and now, the previously filed complaint from her old neighbor. We didn't accuse her of abuse. That wasn't the point. We framed it around instability, a pattern of erratic behavior and manipulation that had escalated to legal harassment. Rachel made sure everything was airtight. Then we filed a formal claim for damages in small claims court. Not so much for the money, though we were asking for just under $10,000, but because it would be public record. A clean, factual trail of Monica's behavior. Meanwhile, I started talking to a few of the people who'd reached out to me quietly over the months. The ones Monica had manipulated or taken advantage of. I asked them if they'd be willing to submit statements. Not to gang up on her, but to establish a pattern. They agreed. And their stories? Chillingly familiar. One former friend said Monica had borrowed money to keep her kids fed, only to be seen posting wine selfies 2 nights later. An ex-roommate claimed she used to leave Lily and Mason alone for hours while she went on Tinder dates, only checking in via baby monitor from her phone. A former boss said she faked a death in the family to get out of a weekend shift, then posted beach pictures on Instagram. Each statement was more damaging than the last. Rachel compiled them into a neat, devastating packet. But the real opportunity came, unexpectedly, through my dad. He showed up at my house one day. I didn't let him in. We talked on the porch. He looked older, tired, less angry than the last time we spoke. I'm not here to argue, he said. I wanted to tell you something before it becomes a bigger mess. I raised an eyebrow. Your sister listed you as an emergency contact on her kids' school forms. My blood turned cold. What? I only found out because the school called me when they couldn't reach her. She listed me as secondary, you as primary. She forged my name. She probably assumed you wouldn't fight it. You always handled things. I laughed bitterly. Not anymore. He nodded slowly. I told the school I'd reach out to you. I didn't say anything else. It took everything in me not to scream. Instead, I looked him in the eye. Dad, if you really want to help me, you'll call the school and tell them she lied. Today. He hesitated. Then, for the first time in a long time, he said, okay. It all came together faster than I expected. The school removed me from the contact list. Rachel sent them a notarized letter clarifying the forgery. The court approved our small claims hearing for the following month. And child welfare reached out for a formal interview. Not about investigating Monica, but about evaluating my claims for legal accuracy and pattern reporting. I wasn't trying to get her kids taken away. That was never the goal. But now, if she ever tried to weaponize them again, through the courts, through the system, through lies, I had a legal fortress around me. Then came the final blow. Monica showed up at the courthouse for the restraining order renewal hearing. She had no lawyer. She stood there, sniffling, trying to frame me as obsessive and spiteful, claiming I was manipulating the system to get back at her. The judge asked for proof. She had none. Rachel calmly handed over our updated file. Not just the old stuff, the police report, the footage, the mailbox letters, but the new material. The forged school forms, the CPS pattern, the emergency contact documents, the third-party witness statements. It wasn't a character assassination. It was a character portrait. The judge looked over the papers. Then he looked at Monica. And I'll never forget what he said. Miss Holbrook, if this continues, you won't just lose contact with your brother. You may lose a lot more. I suggest you take this very seriously. The restraining order was extended by another full year. And just like that, she was out of my life. Not through shouting. Not through revenge fantasies. Through proof. She tried to control the narrative. I gave the narrative receipts. It's been 4 months since that hearing. I haven't heard from Monica. Haven't seen her. Haven't heard from my parents either, aside from one awkward voicemail from my mom around Thanksgiving. But I'm okay with that. Work is steady. I got promoted again. Now I manage 2 junior techs and lead my own client projects. I published one of my short stories in a local magazine. I even joined a community group for adult siblings of narcissists, where I met people whose stories mirrored mine in eerie ways. And Lily? She sent another letter. Hi, Uncle Travis. I started music class. I want to play guitar like you. Mommy says I can't write to you, but I wanted to anyway. Please don't be mad. Love, Lily's smiley face. I kept that letter in my nightstand. Someday, when she's older and asks questions, I'll be ready. But for now, I finally got my life back. And I don't intend to give it away again. It's strange how something can end without fireworks. No explosions. No slammed doors. Just silence. After everything Monica put me through, the false accusations, the forged forms, the break-in, I thought the ending would feel dramatic, triumphant. But when it finally came, it wasn't loud at all. It was a Tuesday. Overcast. Quiet. I was making lunch when Rachel called. Thought you'd want to know, she said. Monica didn't show up to contest the small claims hearing. I blinked. Wait, what? She missed the deadline to file a response. Judge awarded you the full amount by default. $9,600. She has 30 days to pay before it gets escalated to collections. I let that settle in for a second. I expected to feel satisfaction, maybe even glee. But what I felt instead was stillness. Thanks, Rachel, I said. For everything. You fought back, she said. You stood up. That's rare. I smiled. Yeah, took me long enough. The money didn't matter. I wasn't banking on it, literally or emotionally. I didn't even know if she'd pay. But what mattered was that, on paper, the truth had won. There was a record now. Something permanent. Something she couldn't rewrite with crocodile tears and Facebook posts. The silence that followed wasn't tense anymore. It was peaceful. Monica didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't show up at my door or send cryptic notes. She simply disappeared from my life. My parents stayed distant. I didn't hear from my dad at all. My mom sent a Christmas card. No note inside. Just her name. It hurt, of course. Family doesn't just vanish from your heart because they vanish from your phone. But with time, the pain softened. Not because I forgot, but because I forgave myself for wanting them to change. That's what finally set me free. Not justice. Not revenge. Acceptance. Lily sent one last letter in March. It was shorter than the others, written in pink gel pen. Hi, Uncle Travis. I miss you. I wish things were not weird. Maybe one day I can see your cat again. Love, Lily. I didn't write back. I couldn't. Not while the restraining order was in place. But I saved that letter too, folded neatly beside the others, tucked away in the same drawer as Monica's threats. A reminder of both the damage done and the innocence caught in between. But I made a decision that night. One final promise to myself. When Lily turns 18, if she wants answers, I'll give them. Not out of spite. Not to turn her against anyone. Just the truth. Documented. Undeniable. The same way I faced it myself. She'll know I never stopped loving her. That I didn't walk away from her. Only from the lies. These days, life is simple. Work. Music. Stories. Walks in the park. The occasional neighbor waving from across the street. Doug, now fat and unbothered, naps on windowsills like he owns the house. I kept the porch cam. Not because I expect Monica to return, but because it reminds me I'm allowed to protect my peace. It's not paranoia anymore. It's just wisdom. And as for me, I'm still the cool uncle. Just one with a locked gate, a lawyer on speed dial, and a spine made of steel. I used to think saying no would make me the villain. Turns out, it just made me the main character. And I finally started living like it.